Good evening, I'm Dr. Mara Gomez, and I would like to welcome you to this fourth and last panel for today, called Electoral Justice and the New Challenges for the Political Participation of the Youth. I would like to introduce the panel members. José Luis Ignacio Corceniac Pastorino, Minister of the Electoral Court of Uruguay. We also have the presence of Roman Jacques Liranzo, Chief Magistrate of the Electoral Supreme Tribunal of the Dominican Republic. And to chair this panel, we have María de Lourdes González Prieto, Director of the Program in Paraguay for International IDEA. I will now give the floor to the chair of the panel, María de Lourdes González Prieto. Good evening. This is we're on the home stretch of this day. I understand that many of you might be a little bit tired, but I would like to use our accumulated youth so we can continue to work with enthusiasm. And I'm sorry, but this microphone, it just turns itself off every now and then. It's giving a coup. Well, it is an honor and a privilege to chair this panel for me. Like we have already said in the previous panels, the participation of the youth in our region is paramount for the health and well-being of our democracies, and it is a great challenge to promote and to increase the interest of our young citizens to strengthen our democratic processes. There is large and widespread disenfranchisement, and because they don't want to continue to participate, they are very skeptical. They have questions that are oftentimes well-based and reasonable, and they have said that they don't see the benefit of these democratic systems that we have in force, that we have in place. So this is the great challenge of democracy today, and also for the democracy of tomorrow in our region. This is why all the ideas that can be brought to the table and the good practices that can be shared in order to make sure that these citizens, that these young citizens feel engaged and excited by democracy, they will all be useful. So besides listening to the panel members here, please don't hesitate to participate from the experiences of your own countries regarding innovative ideas, good practices, lessons learned, the things that we have done well, the things that we haven't done so well that we can improve to continue to make progress in this path. A while ago, during my speech, I was talking about percentages, and I would just like to remind you that 51% of the world population are under 30 years of age, but the young people only represent 2% of parliaments worldwide. This is a symptom of something, right? And I think that it is an invitation for us to reflect, because in 73% of the countries, the law limits the participation of these young men and women as candidates based on their age solely. They can already vote, but they cannot be voted or elected. And this is a dilemma that we must continue to reflect on, ponder on, and discuss to see what the best way to address it is. Always taking into consideration the historical, political, social, and cultural context of each one of our countries. And after this brief introduction, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I would like to start with the presentations of the two panel members that are here with us today, with whom we have agreed to give them 7 minutes with a little bit of leeway if necessary. Because, like you can see, I'm a very flexible and laid-back chairwoman. But if the time comes, I will very kindly set a limit. But without further ado, I would like to give the floor now to the Chief Magistrate of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal of the Dominican Republic, Roman Jaques. Please go ahead. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, rather. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for providing me with the opportunity to address this topic that is not as discussed as it should be, but it's very important. The challenges of the youth nowadays are many in all aspects, and in the case of politics, the obstacles might be larger and more visible. We're not only talking about legal barriers, but we're talking about deeper things that are linked to decade-long political culture that has reduced the participation. In the particular case of the Dominican Republic, the reality of the youth and their participation in politics presents multiple characteristics, and whether we know that in the last few years we have a tepid participation, we see that the size of the obstacles is so large that they have made the process too slow. That political violence that we have been talking about is extended to a violence toward this political activity. In 2012, the Dominican Republic approved a youth-based law. In the next year, for the first time in the Constitution, we included a clause which was specific for the youth, because many young people feel frustrated because politicians have not fulfilled their expectations. And a recent study highlights these 4 reasons: the lack of institutionality, the weakness in exercising internal democracy, not unfulfilled promises, and lack of political education. Today we can say that the average age of the executive directors of political parties in the Dominican Republic goes between 50 and 65 years old. And in some cases, they have leaders in their 80s that, based on their function, they really draft or lead the way of the political parties. And this is not due to the lack of interest of the youth, but to the design of the bylaws of the political parties, which make it easy for people who have been there for a long time to stay there, under the excuse of this eternal youth, that being youthful is just an attitude. Regardless of me being 60, 70, or 80, I feel young, and if someone aspires or wants to take my position, they will have to wait. The bodies of administrative contentious courts have been also a hindrance for the youth in the country, at least in the past. Today, the Dominican Republic is proposing a 25% participation. However, recently, in a baseball match in my country, I was there with my family, and I invited a colleague, a citizen. He was telling me that the numbers won't hit the quotas. He calculated it. 33% for women, 10% for direct positions of the party, 15% for partnerships, and 25% for youth. And then the rest would be for the internal democracy. So this is a reflection within the positive discrimination that citizens often don't understand or misunderstand. It's necessary that political parties invest more resources in political training that allow the youth to have access to internal positions, so they can incentivize the participation and to execute the projects of the political parties. The electoral justice bodies must disseminate the rights, information on the rights of the youth, and foster the belief of the youth on political institutions that legitimizes the system, and through which the young people can know that their rights are guaranteed. In electoral administrative law matters, in the case of the Dominican Republic, the constitutionality term is a valuable tool to correct matters that have an impact on the youth. In Dominican Republic, 42% of voters in the voters list are between 18 and 35 years old, and out of those, 29% of are the ones that vote. In the National Congress, the legislators, out of from 52 to 62 years old, hold 65% of the positions there. Only 8% are from 30 to 40, and the rest are from 40 to 50. So finally, we adhere to the proposal that Dr. De Lourdes Gonzalez mentioned, that we, as conference and experts and bodies that are concerned on this, we must really reflect seriously on youth and women, and we will talk about women further tomorrow. Thank you very much. You have 1 minute and 24 seconds left, so someone else can use them. No. Okay, so we will now give the floor to the second panel member, which is Minister of the Electoral Court of Uruguay, José Koserniak. Well, that's how I pronounce it in Spanish, but I don't know what the real pronunciation, the original pronunciation is. But thank you very much, Madam Chair. Well, first of all, I would like to again thank for the hospitality of the electoral tribunal here in Mexico, of the federal judiciary. And I would like to state that this is just a sample of all the solidarity I have received from Mexico, that if I start explaining it, I will be here for 1 or 2 days. So again, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank everyone who spoke before me. I would like to tell you that for me, this has been so far very, very hands-on. I am learning a lot from this conference, and I also wanted to thank you again. I'm going to be very brief for really for 4 reasons. Why? Because Madam Chair is already looking at me, and I like to manage time wisely. Second off, because I was prepared to talk about something else, but I love this topic. This is why I happily accepted, I happily agreed to talk about it. And the third reason, because this is the last panel of the day, and I know that we can all be a little bit tired. And I would like to add one more reason, a fourth reason. The ones that talked before me already mentioned many of the things I was thinking about explaining, and they explained it in a much better way than I ever could. I don't believe, like Jorge Luis Borges would say, because I admire him so much as an author, that I don't think that democracy is abusing statistics. He said that many times, actually. But I think it was a way of provoking whoever was interviewing him, and he would just get tired and say things like that. Well, the youth, it seems to be a crucial topic for the present and also for the future of democracy. Because in the measure, or as long as the youth move away from the democratic processes, we will have an exponential problem. If they don't feel from the youth that they belong in that system, democratic system, I'm sure we will have issues, we will have problems, especially in a region that was punished due to democratic ruptures. I remember that a decisive part of the struggle against the dictatorship in my country that happened, maybe the worst dictatorship in my country, between 1973 and 1985, a very important part of that was done by young people, and the dictatorship fell because of student organization and because of the youth individually as well. So looking now a trend of youth not being interested in this process, it hurts, and it really calls us for reflection. I was thinking about the last elections in the European Union. An average less than 30% of the voter lists of the countries voted. Fewer than 30% of the citizens that were enrolled in the voter list voted in the parliamentary elections for the EU. So what does this mean? Maybe they are not concerned because of the problems that they are having in those elections. Specifically, the youth, they don't go to vote. In Uruguay, we have a high turnout that is usually between 90, 92, 93% in elections, but there's also a penalty for those who don't vote, and they cannot justify the reason because they didn't vote. So there is a penalty, a fine that is imposed, and they cannot undergo certain processes that they might want to do at a federal level, and they can vote no. I mean, they can void their vote, but they have to vote, otherwise they're penalized. So people think that that is a breach or a violation to the rights of the people, because if they don't want to vote, people say that they should be able not to vote. But that is a discussion for another day. So something that appears to be fundamental and has already been mentioned is that the youth must be engaged in the decisions that are taken within a democracy. Uruguay has very specific situation. These are the results of the last census of 2015. It might have changed, but not by much. Between 0 and 14 years old, 21% of the population. Between 15 and 24 years old, that's 16%. Between 25 and 54, that's 4.9% of the population. Between 55 and 64, 10.1% of the population, and people over 65 years old, that's 13.9%. So we are a country, an aging country. We are a country where people that don't have a lot of children, and due to our own political situations, when you're 50 or 55 years old, people are young promise. If you see the last presidents of Uruguay are close to 80 years old. Maybe they are elected at around 75. I think that being young doesn't add many virtues. It's just a state of happiness being young, but that doesn't make anyone better, right? Or to have a better or a worse performance just for being young. That has nothing to do with it. But we do have to reflect upon this, and you mentioned that briefly, I think. If it is legal, if there must be some kind of affirmative action in order to establish or set a percentage of legislators that have a specific age. Is that feasible? Would that be okay? And I have heard many people that are for or against it. And if we do that with all ranges, then maybe that might distort some wills based on certain convictions. But anyways, in Uruguay, there's another paradox. In order to be a representative and a member of the House, and that happens in most countries, you have to be at least 25 years old. That's in the Constitution, and that was enacted in the first Constitution in Uruguay. You cannot be under 25 to be a national representative. In order to be senator, you have to be at least 30 years old. Otherwise, you are not eligible. In order to be president of the republic, you have to be at least 35. However, you have the right to vote when you turn 18, like in most countries. And there is a discussion whether we should reduce or change the voting age, legal voting age, to 16 instead of 18. But all these discussions to change general provisions always have a background, and the mistrust of some political parties, because they make electoral calculations. Who will the people that are between 16 and 18 vote for? If they vote, they will vote for a certain political party or a candidate. They will defend that amendment, of course, and the other ones will oppose it. So I wanted to add something else. I talked about a law that it is actually a bill of law that has to do with funding of political parties and with electoral advertising, and they are in the same legislative package. The women's group, which is comprised by members of all political parties, and in women, 2 of every 3 candidates in the list have to be from different genders. That was bypassed by political parties through alternates, and now the Bill of Law has to specify that, including the lists of alternates, so that the percentage of women is at least 1/3 of the list in collegiate bodies. I'm out of time. Okay. Just to wrap up then. In this law, we also stipulate economic stimuli for those who appoint women. And maybe we could also use this mechanism to have youth participate as candidates, because in Uruguay, out of 5 reform procedures, they all end up in a plebiscite. So they are processes that take a long time, and I apologize for the delay, for taking so long. We would like to thank these two interventions from the Chair Magistrate of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal of the Dominican Republic and the Minister of the Electoral Court of Uruguay, Mr. Jaques and Korseniak, if I pronounced that correctly, and especially because they have provided some context for these important topics to face these challenges. On the one side, the active and proactive role that the electoral justice can play in order to promote the participation and the turnout of the youth, but also to improve the quality of the participation in the democracy of all the sectors, including the underrepresented groups such as the youth. The crucial topic this represents for the present and for the future of the democracies. You also talked about that, because if we don't solve the problem now, it will be growing exponentially in the future. And some possible alternatives, just to ponder, some affirmative actions, of course considering their positive effects or negative consequences, but each country will have to assess them based on their context and based on the evolution of their democratic system. So that would be the summary of some of the most relevant points, most relevant items, and I would now like to invite the rest of the attendees to participate. I have 2 people here. And here, anyone would like to participate? Okay, we will start on that side. First, the delegate from Spain, and then the representative from Bolivia, please. Thank you very much, and congratulations for your great speeches. I think there's an issue when when integrating young people into politics that has to do with that, I don't know, human customs that we always see things from our perspective. And in the countries that we live in, this is not a political problem, I think. Because the political problem is just the final result of a more serious problem, a social integration problem. And that's what we see when we ask the youth what problem they had. 1.5 year ago, I conducted a survey for 3,000 that surveyed 3,000 young people in Spain, and we saw from the beginning that the real problem, the real issue, is not a political issue. The political problem is the result, and when we try to solve it as a political problem by setting quotas or decreasing the age to be a representative or to participate in the elections, I think we're making mistakes. And we have two answers usually from political parties. The traditional parties that think that youth is a disease that is cured with age, and that once the young people grow, they will have common sense and they will start getting the basic ideas. And we also have the answer from the young political parties, the new political parties, that understand that the only thing that attracts the young people is new things, maybe not wearing a tie, or maybe using social media, or just having leaders that they see themselves in. We have young leaders in Spain as well that are, I don't know, 33, 35, that seem to answer or to fulfill the promises and the expectations of the youth. So I think that traditional answers are not enough in this case. This is why when facing or when looking into the problem from a global perspective, we can understand that this problem is that they have different experiences. They have lived throughout their lives in democracy, with some exceptions in some countries, but most young people see democracy as something that they take for granted, and they have never lived in a situation that's different. This is why when we get scared because of the surveys that say that young people don't value democracy, we have to think of the context. They have never seen anything else. They have never lived in any other kind of regime. So they might take it for granted. And for some of us that have lived a different situation, then you can value that democracy more compared to what you didn't have in the past. So these different needs, very pragmatic character, because sometimes we say that the youth want to participate, and I don't think that's true. I don't think they want to participate. They want to achieve objectives. And when they see that they cannot achieve them because they find these exclusion hindrances, then they move away. But sometimes we say they just want to. I mean, they what they want to do is they want to participate, like Jose Ignacio was saying, talking about the very relevant role young people had in several transitions, including the one in Spain. And I think the key is that when we don't allow them to participate in an active way, they start looking for a way to participate. And they do things that are different from the institutional way. And that's where we have two parallel roads. The institutions that try to pull them in, and the young people that start doing their own life when they have no institutions that represent them. And I'm sorry because I know I'm taking a lot of time, but we have to adapt to young people as well, because outside the institution they are great leaders, they achieve great challenges, they can self-manage economic projects, business projects, and social projects. And when the institutions are able to adapt to that informality or lack of formality that the young people have built in parallel, and can really have an answer for that, I think then we will start opening up real paths so that the youth can get engaged with the political and electoral life. Okay, now I will give the floor to Magistrate Sandoval from Bolivia. Yes, I would like to say something similar to what Rafael said. I would like to give you an example, or a few examples from Bolivia. And well, there are young people that have made changes and they are in the parties that are already established. There are also many citizen-based movements with very concrete objectives, very even some of them very political goals that are built by or created by young people outside of the political parties. For instance, political campaigns to not or not to amend the constitution based on the social media, but organized and created by them with very little funding. They are also involved in environmental issues. They stop the destruction of forests or parks within the cities. Organizations for to build housings for refugees or for homeless people, and this really lets us know that they want to participate. But the question is, what could these political parties do, the traditional political parties do, to change their leaders? For instance, our our political party in office used to be let's say a novel political party with a lot of new change ideas, but now they have been for 11 years in office. And their own leaders, they have been there for those 11 years. And there are some older political parties that have older leaders that maybe now they are, I don't know, 55, 60 years old, and the new ones. And the older political parties, the leaders are close to or around 70 years old. So what could the political parties do, or what can you tell me about your countries in order to have an internal renewal in leadership, a change of leadership, if maybe it's included in some kind of legislation, in order, like Rafael was saying, in order to include the young people who are actively participating in their societies, but that don't really feel they belong in traditional political parties. Thank you very much. Thank you, Magistrate Sandoval. Any other interventions? On Magistrate Cristaldo from Paraguay. I just would like to say that in one of the traditional political parties, the Red political party, it has a quota for the youth, but that's only for the internal elections of the country. And that's not translated to reality in the general elections. Now, regarding what Magistrate Carmen said, we also had the experience of young people, for instance, Roof for My Country, which is an experience, a positive experience, because today the minister of the Senavitat, which is the social department where these projects or social housings are built, she was the director of Techo para mi país, or Roof for My Country, and she's now a minister. And we also have a minister of youth. So the current government, the current administration, is really betting on these positions held by young people, and that is I mean, the traditional politicians and the establishment, they don't like this. I mean, they are, I'm not saying 60 because I'm 60 and I feel very young. I think I can still do many things. I think I am a great age. I'm a teacher. I also am a magistrate. So but these people, I don't know, are 70 and older, but the new administration, the current administration, is really helping these young people. And the candidate of the Red Party is 36 years old right now, and he will probably win the next election. So I think we are moving forward. Maybe not as much as we haven't made as much progress as we should, but we are making some progress. Thank you. It's a question. In our case, in the last elections 4 years ago, we will now have new elections next week. But in the last elections, a few young people were elected into Congress that just learned to blow their nose. There's just 6 or 7 or 8, but 1 year or a year and a half later, they became part of the establishment. So they are no longer the young people because they wanted to pass educational reforms. They are now part of the system of the negotiation, and they don't lose their physical youth, but the youth with which they were elected into Congress, and now they are just part of the rest of the people who have been in Congress for a long time. So maybe that happens in some other countries as well, because once they hold that position and they see the reality of politics in Congress or in the different departments or ministries, they might change their vision, most of them. That's the question I wanted to ask.
Thank you very much. Now we are going to give the floor to Magistrate José Luis Vargas from the Electoral Tribunal from Mexico. And next we are going to give the floor to our two panelists in order to listen to their reactions to this first round. In a very brief manner, and listening to all these comments, I am of the impression that there is a general trend here, which is the lack of imagination of the political parties and their leaders in order to know how to sell the new format of politics to the young people. In the case of Mexico, we have, as of some months from now, the great innovation to communicate with the young people. They took off their ties. They are not wearing ties anymore, and they think that they changed the format, but they continue speaking the same, acting the same. So, I think, and this is linked with all the comments that we have been making from this morning, is that we haven't really noticed that up to date. In Mexico, for example, in a survey that I read the other day, that typically the population was watching TV 10 hours a day. But now the average for watching TV is 3 hours. And now the average of people in internet is 8 hours a day. So the internet world, and I'm sorry to be recurrent and reiterative, but I know that these are some of the answers that have to do with our sustainability challenges regarding the democracy. It's linked to the understanding of these new ways of communicating, this new package, to say it in some way, this new presentation that we have to give to politics for the new consumers of politics. Otherwise, what is going to happen? A second phenomenon is that we are lacking social psychology. The parties are lacking this, and the candidates are lacking this, to understand how is that these new generations think. And speaking specifically about the millennials. And recently, in the election of the United States, it happened, the fact that they have been out of that they have taken out Bernie Sanders, their possible candidate, and the fact that Hillary Clinton has in some way not done what was necessary to know if they can be accommodated in one formula, made that the difference that she lacked to win the election summed up. So with this new millennial generation, they are brilliant. If you have worked with them, they have a potential, they have tools for the professional world, which is quite different to other generations. But they are completely, if you don't give them the things as they want, they say, I can't, or this is not what I want. So And you were mentioning a while ago that the youth said, this is my era, this is my time to change the world. They change the world, but if they have everything they need to change it. And this is the lack of social psychology. The parties, the candidates, and in general, the politicians are not understanding how to approach, how to get closer to this new format that they have, because we are passing them the token to run politics in the very close future, as we are saying this. Thank you very much, Mr. José Luis Vargas. Now we are going to give the floor, a maximum for 3 minutes, to our two panelists in the same order that you took the floors first. First of all, Magistrate Chair of the Electoral Tribunal of Dominican Republic, Roman Hex. Thank you very much for your wise comments. And I would like to take advantage of my 3 minutes, of course. While I was having lunch, I was talking to Professor Sobato, and he was telling that the youth is going to extend, because nanotechnology and technology, the medical science, is going to make women and men more and more extended in life. Up to when? Am I young? 40, 50, 60, 70, 80? I am an academic, and I have a professor who is 80 years old, and he is teaching. So, the reflection of the Minister of Chile and my colleague, my peer from Spain, are very wise, and I am going to link them. This willingness of social influence have to be used in the young people, and that discrimination that is exerted in the young people due to a political culture, and I'm not included in the list because I'm young, because I have no experience in the party. This is a Dominican reality. Then we have the positive discrimination. But it comes, then we have the reflection of the minister from Chile. They go into their comfort zone, they are used to the establishment, and they are only one more. That's the great challenge of democracy. So that if you are new there, you are not there because of an imposition, but due to your merits. Thank you very much, Mr. José Ignacio Corza. Also to share what you have mentioned, first of all, I remember Juan de Mairena and Antonio Machado, the poet, and they say in politics as in art, the new ones throw stones to the originals. So there is a huge responsibility of the political parties and the renewal mechanism, the mechanism to renew leadership, and this is the responsibility of the political party. The electoral authorities have nothing to do with this. In case these political parties want to make easier the inclusion of the new people. But there is another thing that was pointed out. It's true that the crucial decision in our countries, and in the countries and everywhere in the world, really, these are not decisions, political decisions, which require the approval of the citizens, or the citizens don't think that they are going to make a difference, for example. If they don't want to go to vote in Europe. Why? Because the people didn't understand that the result of those elections was going to impact them, to affect or to benefit or to whatever them. So we can participate politically when we think that there are at stake many things that are interesting for you. Otherwise, you look to the other side. And that was my comment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We still have some more minutes for a second round of interventions, if you are willing to do so, because we have been managing time very efficiently. So if someone else has any other comment, we have still some time, and we have to take advantage of time. Or do you want to go and have some rest? We can also take advantage and rest a little bit. Well, it would be very difficult for me to make a summary, a fair and complete summary of what we have discussed. Only in 1 minute, I will mention some of the key words that we have heard here, and that could provide us with some guidelines of a route map in order to face in a better way the challenge of making the young people participate more. We have spoken about the responsibility of the political parties. We have spoken about the solutions and that they cannot be in only one dimension, but they have to be a comprehensive approach. We have spoken about this is not a topic of age, but to respond to specific needs of the young sectors. The world has changed, so we have to change with it. We have spoken about the huge influence of the social media and how young people are using them. What can the political parties do? What can the electoral authorities do in order to strengthen this participation? We have to go for the young people, yes, but the challenge is also for people that have more experience and they are not willing to leave this space for the new people. We have posed questions. What is going to happen with these young people that get to power or to get to office? They are absorbed by the establishment. We have spoken about the lack of imagination of the parties that are not finding the right ways to sell to the young people these proposals. Also, we talked about the challenges of the sustainability and how to understand the new ways of communicating, some possible tools, amongst them social psychology. Thank you very much for your participation, your attendance, and I would like to thank you for the privilege that you have granted me of sharing with you this time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your participations. And with this, we are finishing the works of the day. The organizers invite you all to a cocktail party that is going to be held at 7:30 in the terrace of the hotel, La Casona. And of course, tomorrow, we are going to start at 10 a.m. with the panel number 5, Equality of Gender in the Electoral Justice. Thank you very much and have a great evening.